started. Call the roll.
Nathan Burlingame,
Here.
Omari Davis,
Here.
Ann Dreher,
Here.
Robert Dutta,
Here.
Andrew Backler,
Here.
Alex Foster, here. Greg Hanley,
Here.
Gary Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence, Rebecca Meyer, here. Edie Myers,
Here.
Andy Wenchel,
Here.
and Dick Woodruff.
Here.
But we have a quorum.
Okay, welcome to the January 21st, 2026 Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board meeting. Effective July 1st, 2024, updated state legislation continues to require certain county board appointed commissions, including the HLRB, to have an in-person forum to conduct its monthly business. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. For members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join us via the device muted until you would like to speak, but ensure your video is turned on and you are visible during the entire meeting. For members of the public joining us this evening, today's meeting is available to stream from the county website via Microsoft Teams link. There is also a dial-in phone option for those who wish. Please keep your device muted and video turned off until you speak. For public speakers who have pre-registered, please wait until you are called on to speak. For those who have not pre-registered, requests for public speaking can still be submitted. Staff will do their best to accommodate those requests. However, we cannot guarantee that they will be met. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room for in-person speakers who have not. Public comment is only allowed for items advertised on the HLRB agenda. The ability to sign up to speak will no longer be available after the HLRB chair stated that public testimony has concluded. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, written comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. You may use the chat for technical assistance. All voting will be done by a call of the roll. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website and the County Commission meeting YouTube page. Avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or subject requirements. Okay. We're going to move on to the December minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those?
Yes. A horrible tech situation going on in my house where I don't have internet, and they updated my iPad so I can't print. But anyway, so I have some notes here. So I don't know exactly which paragraph. In the first case of the ADU, it says that DRC didn't have any. That I stated that DRC didn't have any problems with the materials. I just wanted to clarify that we didn't have any problems given the current board practice, of allowing materials for ADUs that we don't allow for the historic structures. Second thing, the case of the dormers, in regard to that DRC put it on the consent calendar. I wanted to clarify that that we, in doing so, we also made it clear that they had an option to come to the full board if they wanted. That consent was basically just, if they were in agreement doing the changes, they could accept the consent. But if not, then they were free to come to the full board, which they did. Third thing has to do with the in terms of what staff can do to try to avoid situations like this in the future. It's in the notes. It says that staff is going to work with the the building staff to improve inspections. But I specifically said that there should be specifically a review at the framing inspection. A really crucial one. So I just wanted to make sure that they were there. Yeah.
Yes, I had a comment on the minutes. On page 15, in the last paragraph on the page, in, I guess, the third sentence, it says, Mr. Laporte mentioned that in his neighborhood, they had what was described as zoning variances, and pretty sure I didn't say that. Okay, I was talking about Arlington County's procedure for zoning variances. They've changed the name, but they still have zoning variances, but it's not used for the same purpose. So I would like to suggest that the word in his neighborhood, that they had what was described as quote zoning variances, unquote. Take out the words in his neighborhood, comma. Take out the quotations around zoning variances, and in lieu of the words in his neighborhood, Mitchell, Arlington used to have a process for. So zoning, I mean, we still have a process for zoning. And then another, in the next sentence, they're talking about me. He said that he had been involved in this process and saw how disruptive they can be to the neighborhood. I think they should substitute the word it for they. And also there's an extra period at the end of that sentence. I have these marked on this page if somebody wants to change this. But I was talking about, like, it wasn't something that my neighborhood, it sounds like something my neighborhood had actually Arlington County process that I was discussing at the time.
Do I need to look at these changes or? Okay. I move that we approve the December meeting minutes with the edits suggested by the board. Okay, please call.
Okay, please respond yes if you approve Jen. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Dan Dreyer,
Abstain.
Robert Dudka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster, Ray Hanley,
Abstain.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Wenchel,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Have any questions about this item? I move that the consent agenda item.
Second.
And please call the roll.
Okay, please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Dan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Dudka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster,
Yes.
Ray Hanley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Wenchel,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Awesome. And were they here at all?
Mr. Abbasi and Tuan, if you're on, your item was approved and I will be sending you some information tomorrow. But you can leave the meeting if you'd like. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Right.
Okay.
At this time, public testimony has concluded for tonight's meeting. Well, since it was going to be such a short meeting, I had asked if maybe we could talk about a few things we wanted to focus on for 2026 for a few reasons. One is that we were talking about maybe having a bigger conversation at some point about this. So I was envisioning this more as like, I did hear from, I think like 2 or 3 people via email, but envisioning this as people around and everyone could say 1 or 2 things that either, they want to focus on this year, they want the board to proactively support for historic preservation in the county. Or something that you maybe thought you would be doing on the board that we aren't doing. So it really can run the gamut of, things you'd like to improve about historic preservation in the county to, things you actually want to do this year that are very concrete. But I thought we could just go around and everyone could say a couple things and are we gonna take notes on that? Yes. Okay. Where are we gonna put them up? Or
I can do that. See me tight.
yeah, and we'll just see where that takes us. And then, like I said, we're hoping to still have discussion items, but we don't know if we should do that more in a format like this, after a short meeting, or if we're going to be able to do it at a kind of a larger retreat format. So we're still trying to figure that out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are minutes being taken of this? And is this a public meeting?
Yes.
But it's not part of the,
Well, we're not voting on anything or deciding anything. So it's kind of a time where you can share whatever you want. But yes, it's a public hearing and it's subject to FOIA and all of that. Do you want to start it, Mark?
Oh, yeah, sure thing. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, if I got the spot. Here's my left.
Yeah, better. No, I was thinking about this a little bit as I got the email, and it's a couple of things. One thing is that I think I'm not really sure. These are more just brainstorming, not necessarily a strategy or a tactics essentially, but I think we should look into ways to sort of think about how to preserve landscapes along with buildings. We've kind of talked about in the past, like the tree issue Dick had brought up many times, and also there's also county really has red study right now as well going on. So there's sort of these things that are sort of talking about how to preserve landscapes and sort of also accommodate development. And I think that also ties into historical preservation as well, sort of preserving sort of these historical view sheds or different things. And then again, there's not like a tactic there, more just sort of like an idea about what we can look at doing or think about. Because they are related. I feel like. One sort of benefit of, I'd say, Maywood versus maybe other neighborhoods, your tree canopy there maybe is a little bit more mature, a little bit more older, just because people aren't necessarily knocking down homes clear cutting the lots. But again, that gets into zoning and other issues. So it's all not truly historical issue, but it kind of falls into some of the things. And the other one, again, there's no strategy here, but another one that I started thinking about a little bit from last conversation about the preservation of that 1988 office building, because the guy came towards us and essentially he wanted to preserve, we wanted to do an LXD for this 80s sort of a average office building, and I thought there wasn't necessarily merit towards that particular case, but in general, though, I think there should be some sort of, I don't know, thoughts, initiatives about how much or how little of sort of the 70s and 80s sort of office building fabric, or that Docomo era fabric that we are interested in preserving or not. I mean, it could be maybe discussions that essentially it's too valuable, so maybe it's not worth preserving. But I think that there should be discussion about it instead of sort of knocking down all Christmas units and all gone. I mean, happen, but there should be discussions about that, or maybe work that into the sort of preservation themes that we would work with. Those are my two issues.
I guess I'm the liaison member to the Arlington 250 committee. So I've been sort of thinking about that, and I know John will talk a little bit more about that later on. But it turns out it is also the 50th anniversary of the HALRB this year. So, we can be a little bit celebratory too. I think sometimes we tend to rightly focus on obstacles to preservation that we encounter, but also so much has been done in the last 50 years. But I think about.
Oh, I didn't know.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing would be just continuing to find ways to work with other committees and other organizations. I've been tapped now to do a site plan review committee thing, but you know, even being on this board for a few years, I still feel a little siloed, like I don't know everything going on. So just continuing to find ways to do that. And then kind of building off of Omari's comment about like 70s and 80s buildings. Yeah, just kind of being cognizant of that almost like moving target. Like, you know, the 50-year rule is always moving forward, and you know, it's more of a guideline than a rule too. I mean, even in my job, I'm starting to do historic reports on significant buildings from the 1990s. Like, it's, you know, it's moving forward in time. That's not quite 50 years ago, but you know, it will be sooner than we think. So yeah, just continuing to keep that in mind and explore that.
Thank you.
I agree with Nan's comments about celebrating some of the things that have been done. I guess I kind of knew it was the 50th anniversary of the HALRB. I think that would be a good thing. I also think that there is an incredible amount of misinformation, misunderstanding, perhaps, particularly on behalf of people in Maywood who haven't been there very long, about the process and how it works. And so doing some neighborhood outreach, which I think we've talked about a little bit, would be very helpful. There are other, you know, some of these national register districts that are so beset by tear downs might benefit from a little bit of information about what the National Register actually means in their neighborhood. And I know that our staff has been great about getting out and doing things. And I think it'd be great to continue more of that. And then perhaps we could have a group on the board that would help with that, which I would be willing to do. I guess the other thing was looking at this whole miscommunication with and misunderstanding of the approval process for building permits and how that interacts with historic preservation and actually the functions of the HALRB and the historic preservation staff. And maybe we need to conduct a little bit of education outreach for the various county representatives that we indirectly, sometimes directly interact with. Or maybe just inviting them to a meeting to talk about the process from their perspective. That perhaps we could enlighten them on what really ought to happen in a, you know, in a good way. Yeah, that's about it for now.
Right.
Well, I completely agree with what Joan's saying. If you remember a few weeks ago, we talked about someone came and said to us, a member of I think one of the things we'd benefit from is more feedback from the public. And one of the members of the public came to us who was related to who owned the Happy Nest property, for example, saying it would be so helpful if the Arlington residents knew more about their options when it came to protecting historic properties, how easy or hard it was, what degree of protection could be obtained for what kind of property, what were the resources that are out there. There may be a lot of people in the county who know that, but this county changes a lot. And I know that in my own community association, the membership turns over quite frequently and people are not knowledgeable. And I think that Joan's idea of putting together a small group of staff and members of the board who would be willing to visit community associations and have an hour session with each one where we talked about here are the options available for communities. Here are the options available for individual property owners. Here's what is the county can do and has done in terms of historic preservation. And what would you like to see done? You know, sort of try to get a little bit of feedback from the communities, but also convey to individual homeowners and property owners that there are levels of protection. There are many different roads that you could go down that would get certain kinds of protection. Some keep your property from ever changing again, but others, most of them, really are only, you know, paper if somebody comes in and really wants to make a change. So it would be, I think it would be really helpful for us as a board to understand what's going on with the communities, but also very helpful to both individuals and to these community associations that are often misinformed about what protections they have or do not have. There's an awful lot of concern in some of the older communities like Lion Park, Lion Village, some of the ones, as maybe the ones you were thinking about, where they're up in arms over the, you know, tear downs that are going on, and think that historic preservation might be a way to address it. Maybe not, but it would be very useful to go and talk to them. The other idea I had was that we did a training earlier this year with the Department of Historic Repair, where DHR, what's that?
It's Department of Historic Resources.
Resources. They were very informative. And I think, you know, many of the older members of the longer time members of the board might know much of what they conveyed, but it was very educational for me to learn what resources they had available. I think one thing that might be helpful for all of us would be to have kind of an update from DHR where they might speak to us remotely or come and take a portion of a board meeting and share with us what's going on at the state level. We're going to have a very different state government starting now, and there may be opportunities coming up that would be useful to hear about, or there may be ways that we can work more closely with the state. I know our staff does all the time, but it might be very useful to learn more about what is what's going on, what they have to offer, and what the resources are. And then the last point I would like to make is that I think it would be very useful to assess. This is along the lines of what Andrew was saying. It would be very useful to have a better understanding of what's available to us in terms of survey data, as well as kind of monitoring for sort of middle of 20th century forward properties. We've seen the loss of the Keybridge Marriott. We've seen lots of things disappear over the last 5 years, which maybe shouldn't have been protected anyway, or maybe should have been. But I have the sense that we didn't get much of a shot at it, that we didn't have much of an opportunity to discuss or learn about those properties before actions were taken, in part because they've not been ones that people cared about. I'm just wondering if we could think about how or whether we should give attention to some of those more recent properties that are also very characteristic of Arlington and Arlington's infrastructure over the last 50 to 80 years. Those would be my 3 ideas.
I haven't been on the board long, so stop me if this has been done before. But you know, when as the board is considering historic districts, properties, COAs, while we have pictures, while we have descriptions and such, it can be still fairly abstract. And I thought it would be interesting, perhaps once a year, to potentially have a, for lack of a better word, field trip to whether it's current ongoing iterations, whether it's, you know, past properties or districts that have been in front of the board, you know, get on the ground, look at things, and staff can tell us about those properties, about districts, and get, you know, hands-on experience with some of these properties.
Yeah, I'll just associate myself with what Joan especially and Greg talked about, which is to make a much more concerted effort to reach out to other neighborhoods in Arlington with the, with a, more of a program really, where we do speak to neighborhood associations and try to articulate the advantages of forming a historic district, which everybody stated correctly, they don't really know what those advantages are. I think they focus on the disadvantages. But for instance, I don't think any of them know about the possibility of getting Virginia state tax credits, which are refundable and carry-overable, and unless they've changed the law in recent years, so that, if you do a substantial renovation on your house, on the old part of your house, you can not pay any Virginia taxes for a couple of years if you spend a lot of money. And, there are facts like that I think people need to be aware of, especially in these neighborhoods. So I myself would be I would volunteer to speak to any neighborhood association. I have plenty of time, I'm retired, and, and be willing to do that and proselytize, for lack of a word, about historic districts. The other thing is, I think Cray is right. It is a somewhat of a new and unique era in Virginia politics that may make the political climate more likely to accept more regulation around trees. And I know that, a few years ago in discussions that I had with Matt DiFerranti and a few other members of the board about trying to get a Virginia law passed, and talked to Arlington's lobbyist about trying to get a Virginia law passed about that would do something to be more protective of trees in neighborhoods, canopy trees. There is always this feeling of, just up against something that's going to be quite impossible. But there's a lot I think that's going to be possible now in the next few years around those kinds of issues, tree protection, neighborhood protections of different kinds. And I think that's worth exploring with our lobbyists. I'm not really even sure who the current lobbyist is. I haven't talked to anybody recently, but, and there's also, just so everyone knows here, last year there was a legislation pending in the legislature that would have taken the Virginia board and made it, instead of all large seats, it was going to be, designated districts. Each member of the board was going to have a designated district, and the county chairman would be a separate elected position. And I think that passed one of the houses. I can't remember, but most people think that that's going to pass both houses this year and get signed by Spanberger, which is going to make Arlington's government a lot different and a lot more, I think, responsive to the community than it currently is, to be honest. Though I'm not talking about staff, I'm talking about our political leaders. So, I think all of those things are worth paying attention to, and that I'll just sort of pass the baton here, Jerry.
Yeah, I'd like to associate myself with its remarks on the tax credit program. That we started designating these national register historic districts way back then, and the purpose of that was to preserve these neighborhoods, and it really hasn't. And mainly the way the instrument that you have the main instrument, I think, is the historic preservation tax credits. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard anybody that's used that tax credit in years and years. We used to have an active program of people from the staff going out to neighborhood organizations and neighborhood associations. And so I don't know if we need to, if the problem is with us not promoting it enough, or it's not economical, or maybe there's something wrong with the law, but it just doesn't work anymore the way it was intended to pass. So it might be interesting to look into see whether this could be made to law to make it more functional. And on the topic of the HALRB anniversary, I don't know exactly what we're celebrating, because my understanding is that HALRB was formed when we had a county manager, they had a historic commission and landmark review commission, or I don't know exactly the names of these, but the county manager who thought we had too many advisory commissions, so he decided to combine the two commissions into one, and that was the birth of the HLRB. But there had previously been a landmark review board and a history commission. So I mean, you know, and they just we had 15 members. I think one had 7 and one had 8. They didn't want to kick anybody off. They just put 15 so that everybody who was on member on both of those commissions would be on the new commission. So actually for Virginia, we're a very large commission, especially for the size of our community. Most of the commissions, I took the training that was discussed earlier a few years ago, and our 15-member board is much larger than most of the historic preservation boards in Virginia. But we have other things to do also. So, but anyway, so I think if we want to celebrate an anniversary, maybe we could look to when the historic preservation program started. And I don't know if that started with the landmark board or if that was after form and the ordinance was passed. I don't when the historic preservation ordinance was first passed. So if that's what you're talking about, to me, I think, but if it was just if you want to celebrate the reorganization, I mean, you know, we had predecessor organizations, so we celebrate those two. I think we have to think of celebrating before we decide to celebrate.
All good to know. I didn't. Thank you. Okay.
I'm gonna pile on to the tree preservation issue to start off with. I don't know if everybody's heard that, you know, the county chopped the tree down in Lyon Park that basically outraged everybody. And there was a great deal of dissatisfaction with how the process worked and how the county staff interacted with Lyon Park officials. So anyway, that led to we had a 2-hour meeting with Takas about a few days ago, last week, and which was a very good meeting, and it pretty much focused a lot on tree preservation, and we talked about the historic nature of our neighborhoods. The Ashland Heights president also attended the meeting, and so sort of a joint meeting between our two neighborhoods. And there was a lot of dissatisfaction expressed with one, how the county is dealing with this. The tree canopy study does not seem to be very well studied. One, the data is old. I know it's at least 2 or 3 years, or at least 3 years old based on my own property. And it vastly overestimates the canopy. Lyon Park has lost most of its canopy redevelopment. And, as a historic neighborhood, it has completely changed the character of the neighborhood. And so I think this is a really important issue. I mean, we've now heard it from several people here. Takas seemed fairly amenable to our complaints, and there was some talk about legislative changes in Richmond that might make it more possible. But I think it seems like we're ripe to have a discussion with the county, and historic preservation, I think, can really have since many of the neighborhoods in Arlington are national historic districts. It seems like we have a forum here to really push this issue, because it is transforming our neighborhoods. And I think this is a very good time for us to push this to the forefront. So I'm adding on to all the other people who expressed an interest in the tree preservation. Second thing is, as I've been noticing over the years, changes to the infrastructure of Arlington. And an example that sticks in my craw from a long time ago, probably at least 15 years ago, is the bridge that there was a bridge that Arlington Boulevard crosses Washington Boulevard that was replaced. And it was this really beautiful mid-century modern bridge. And it was replaced by something that, although it has an arch, has nothing of the character of the original bridge. And at the time, there was really, there wasn't a lot of feeling, for that. But I feel like we concentrate on buildings, but we're not looking at the actual built infrastructure of Arlington, bridges. Another example that's come up recently is property across the street from me demolished one of those stone walls that you see all over Arlington that Arlington built, I believe, in the early 70s, which for me is sort of typical of Arlington. You drive around, you see these stone walls where there were changes to grade as they made improvements to the roads and so forth. It's something of an Arlington signature. Although this wall was on county property, the developer was allowed to demolish it without any public notice or review. And so anyway, I would like the board to take a look at also at not just buildings, but also infrastructure.
Cheryl Wally's comments about trees, I think that's very important. But I think there's a real problem. We've got a number of neighborhoods, Arlington, found some years ago eligible hospitals, but it was sort of like the whole neighborhood, like Ashton Heights, and Park, had to go along with it. And I think it isn't too late to do a block approach instead of the whole neighborhood. There are streets, I happen to live on one, but all the houses are the original houses built some dating back to the 30s. And, I'd like to see some way of doing that. I think this is a criticism of we spend so much time on historic designations and working out and this both, if you will, because the house, there's a couple of houses that were eligible to find part particular, and they're really quite significant. If you go back, way back, before it became a real neighborhood, it's basically farmland. There's some old farmhouses that are still there, and I don't see why we can't speed up the process on that. If the neighborhood was already said to be possibly eligible, why we have to go through a whole series of things. We missed the boat on one of the more significant pieces or houses in Bryant Park, just because said we had to take it in turn and do a long study. And the owner finally got, she wanted to continue to sell that, get it designated. But her son was saying, well, you wanted to go back part of the lot, so the two lots, wanted to build on the second lot. And we said, no, we didn't do that. Whoever was working in the time This is just secondhand information. And I think we missed this opportunity because we said, it's been asked for the whole thing and delayed the process. If it had speeded up, the house would have been saved. It's still there. I think the owner was rather disappointed. She's getting older. House doesn't.
Great, thank you.
I think echoing a lot of what everyone else has said. I think the bulk of what we've heard each year is houses in Maywood and modifications that they want to make to their contributing or not contributing structures. And I think that we need to do more outreach, not only to the community, but to the architects and designers and contractors that work on their projects. Because I think that for the larger projects that come in with really sophisticated teams, they understand the process, and these smaller companies may not as well. And I know that staff work with each individual hand in hand as they go through the process. But if there's some sort of template or examples or a way to demystify a lot of the technical aspects to show someone, okay, this is an example of the Secretary of Interior standards #1, like visually, or just some sort of way to help aid in that process too. Part at the end.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've been on the board for a few years. An architect, I love that the buildings capture so much of Arlington's history, but I'll have to be humble and say that obviously Arlington's history is bigger than the buildings and the placards that we put into place. And I do think that there's probably a general public sentiment that the HALRB is antagonistic to change. I don't think that's true. And kind of in the wake of this Langston Boulevard plan and several other plans that are coming about with new density and new opportunities, I'm curious about ways that we could incentivize space to kind of integrate Arlington history and storytelling into new construction. But I don't know exactly what that would look like, but just brainstorming, spitballing, potentially that's a proffer or for density or tax incentives in exchange for strengthening what HLRB finds to be important about Arlington culture. So that could be allocating space for a local museum. Green Valley is looking for a location there, or legacy business, enshrining a space at the storefront for legacy businesses that make Arlington strong. Committing to perform archaeology studies before and during construction, or committing somehow to tell part of Arlington history and story that isn't necessarily part of that structure. I used to work on Wilson Boulevard, and there was a big photo in the front lobby of Barnum Bailey Circus coming down the street. And it made me think as I was on the site plan review for the Route 50 Motel, and that did involve HLRB because it was a historic structure at some level. And even though they mostly demolished it, a lot of what they were trying to do, not just in the design to recreate the building or elements of that building, but was to tell part of Arlington history with that motel and that experience of coming down Route 50. So the experiences, maybe those are things that we can incentivize in this new construction, because things are going to change. So how do we make sure that Arlington is present for this next generation?
Great, thank you. Well, I think what resonated with me most, which a lot of people have suggested, is I just really feel like our National Register neighborhoods are kind of like fraying, and it's it's not one thing. It's not like just trees or just all the new development. or like kind of some of the infrastructure, I think, but it just seems like the combination of all of that makes it seem like, yeah, some of these things are gonna disappear. So I love the idea of going out with the neighborhood associations. I don't think my neighborhood's done that since I've lived there. I know they've probably done it in the past. But, and I also, you know, I talked to some of my neighbors on the block in our street about just their block doing something like that. So I'd love to like find more ways to be proactive, even if it's just, you know, maybe not getting the entire neighborhood to say, yeah, we're agreeing to be a local historic district, but, you know, getting maybe a block or getting the county to understand that, you know, whether it's trees or my personal pet peeve is the front setback for new development houses in our neighborhood is like 5 or 10 feet sometimes ahead of the old houses. So the new houses kind of like hang over the old house. And that, you know, if they were kind of at the same setback and property line, I think you could see the old house with the new. But sometimes the way we allow people to build the new development makes it really, quite frankly, like overshadow the older homes that do stay. So with the county, you know, ordinances more like carrots and sticks to, you know, we're not gonna prevent tear downs necessarily, but the tear downs that do happen can be a little more, you know, sensitive to their like historic neighbors. So, but I think that's like a kind of a combination of a bunch of little things. So, you know, that's obviously kind of hard, but if we were interested in that, we could, you know, I think the way this could culminate is, I think, one is it seems like there's a decent group that would be willing to go to the neighborhood, you know, meetings. I know Lion Village does one every month, so we could do kind of a group, kind of an outreach group. You know, if we talk about more issues that are really bothering us, you know, we could do to the county board about, you know, things we noticed that we're concerned about, kind of thing. So, and it's also great just to hear like what everyone kind of is interested in. If there's like a site plan that comes up, or you know, they hear something about, you know, 70s, 80s architecture that, you know, I'm just like really interested in that. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and opinions.
I had one additional thought after I heard Alexandra's really interesting comments. And that is, there are a couple of neighborhoods that I think are, well, at least I've heard from people I've met and friends who live in those neighborhoods that are feeling sort of at a crisis point in terms of their own histories. Green Valley being one, Halls Hill, primarily the traditionally African-American neighborhoods, Penrose, they're feeling very much that their history is being disappeared, that there's no one that more attention needs to be paid, not that no one, but that more attention needs to be paid to how to maintain at least some reference to what importance they had and what they still have in some cases, but in some cases is rapidly disappearing. And there's a lot of concern. I had a long conversation with a fellow who I got to know at one of the tripping stone things. And he was talking about how there's a struggle to figure out what to preserve, because so much of the material culture of those neighborhoods, which was so important for 100 years to the families and to those who live there, that material culture is disappearing because it was never very expensive. It was never very fancy, right? It was never very impressive from an architectural point of view, but it meant so much culturally. And if you see the Halls Hill fire station and how they redeveloped that, but with a very incredible historic museum in the first floor of 2 or 3 rooms of the history of that particular fire brigade, it's, you know, they have preserved what was of essence the culture of that important, one of the first Black firefighters units in Virginia, frankly, and they preserved that and the role that they played in their own community, but also in civil rights and in all of those other things. I think we probably ought to, if we're really serious about that, it would be very useful to pay attention to the history, particularly of those communities that feel they are really threatened by development. Communities that were traditionally commercial, traditionally residential are now becoming commercial. I mean, Boston's gone. I remember when Boston was a residential area, but it's not anymore. That's done. That's, tied up and gone. But there are other communities that are threatened in that way. It may happen anyway. There may be nothing we can do to prevent it, but we can see if there's a way we can work with communities to encourage the preservation of some of these cultural values. I think those are really important. It's in there.
Yeah, what's the?
Yeah. Cultural
Yeah.
heritage. Yeah.
Is that kind of a new idea for a district?
Oh, yeah, so one of our goals, it's wonderful to hear everybody's ideas and goals that you all are doing. Some are kind of new to hear. But one of the things that we have in the historic preservation program this year is to evaluate the different tools that we can have to kind of manage things like smaller block districts or focusing on what are mostly known as conservation districts. We can't call them that in Arlington because that name's already taken. So we're looking at that as like a heritage district. That would be something like ideal for someplace like Halls Hill or Green Valley, or other neighborhoods where there has been a loss of material integrity, possibly some architectural integrity. But we definitely know that those are historic places. They're significant and there should be some way of having protection. So that is definitely a tool that we're looking into.
Okay, yeah, I know we had mentioned that before, and JD Spain was also very interested in those. So we talked with him about that a little bit, so.
Was there an existing county program or set of zoning overlay concepts or whatever that deal with heritage districts like
Yes.
that?
We were doing the plan in 2023. We looked at different ones in Virginia specifically, and I believe that Charlottesville is probably a really good example of where they do that. So we can definitely pull from certain examples, but the wonderful thing about Arlington is that we can kind of set that bar too. We can set it because a lot of people look, especially just other CLGs, look at what we're doing to see how they might then apply that to their program. So even if there might be not exact comparisons, we can definitely look into that. And that's something we want to study and come up with a proposal this year.
Have anything else before I close out my time?
Yeah, can I just ask how we can at least operationalize this going to different neighborhood association meetings? Because we talk about it all the time, it doesn't. So I'm happy to take the lead if you want.
That's helpful.
If that's,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's necessary.
Yeah, I took notes on who kind of said they would be up for that.
I don't want to hog it.
And I think.
Well, Dick, would a letter to the association be the first step? You write a letter from the board that would be given to all of the associations and say,
We could do
"Hi,
that.
we're available."
We could do that. I think
Yeah.
it's a little,
Email them. I think they would be very open to it. I'm sure Lion Village. They do a meeting every month, so.
But having been having tried this multiple times with Lion Park over the years, being extremely unsuccessful.
Really?
And that's what I'll say about that. It was actually very hostile.
In
Now-
getting the meeting or just
No, in
presenting it?
presenting it. The meeting is, it's relatively easy to achieve. The question, so that was some time ago, so maybe the climate has changed at this point, but it needs to be acknowledged that it's not like this is the first time anybody has done this. We've done this in the past several times. And so it would need to be framed in the, a lot of time has passed, things are changing, would you like to look at it again? Because people do remember that this discussion was had in the past.
Well, and I have a
I
list
don't
of
even think I would bring
people.
that.
Yeah, well, and I think including the tax credits, I think is a great idea. Including as many advantages is probably good. But I just had, obviously we do want to give people an overview of like what we do and what's the difference between being on the National Register versus being a local historic district. And then like the options like the block by block or the cultural store heritage district. Smaller options if, no one wants to do that. And then I think the tax credits and any other kind of benefits being, an historic, local historic district are important because I think we definitely want to see positive.
Register is right.
Well, you don't have to be local. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And in regard to that, because I know Lion Park is well aware, there used to be a lot of activity with the tax credits and including from people who were very hostile to the idea of historic districts. We had I think one of our presidents was very hostile and yet he took advantage of it for himself. So people were aware, maybe they're not so much anymore, but
Yeah.
so it's probably worth revisiting, but it used to be much more active. And I think there's a couple of factors that we also need to be aware of is that because of the people, the economics have changed. It's for a lot of people, putting an addition on their house is not what's happening. They're selling, developers are buying, tearing down. And then the other thing that I remember from some years ago, which was an issue, which is, I don't know how this has changed, is that there used to be a lot of problems with the SHPO, with the Virginia, State Historic Preservation Officer, and that they were really sticklers for everything, and they made the process so difficult that people gave up. I had a client who was like a dyed-in-the-wool historic preservationist. We were working on a very important historic project, and he gave up because he just couldn't. I mean, we were doing everything by the book, and we couldn't get it approved by the SHPO. And so the point is from Arlington's side, there's been in the past there used to be a lot of interest and a lot of activity, and then it sort of died down. And I think some of it had to do with that. So I don't know if that's changed, but that's something we would probably want to touch base with the SHPO and see.
Yeah, I mean, I
what the
agree.
climate is.
I've redone my house from top to bottom. I figured I couldn't get tax credits. I didn't even look into it, so I think education would be helpful.
But can I just make a point? I don't think we need to overthink this and get all official about it to start off, because I think it's not coming in there with a hard sell on anything. It's just offering to meet with the association to talk a little bit, because we have experience with the process about what the benefits and the advantages are. I think we have to have nailed down every last detail about what's doable and what's not doable. It's just to try and change the culture a little bit. I don't think a letter from the HLRB to each of these neighborhood associations is a way to go, because I just think it's too heavy-handed. I think we should just offer, any one of us can get to know, in some way what the president of each of these neighborhood associations, just call them up and say, I'd like to speak to you at your next meeting, and try and be casual about it and not scare anybody.
Yeah, I think
I did
village or.
some years ago. I did this. Can't remember. Maybe went to about three or four neighborhood associations just to provide information. People were mostly interested, but then I guess because the point of the meeting was to talk about historic preservation, and so people who were interested probably were the ones who came, but it was just basically informational. It didn't. I mean, whether it produced any results, probably not likely. But I think I also went to the Civic Federation at one point to talk on historic preservation issues. So, but they had asked me to come. So, but it's been a while. It doesn't. And populations change, neighborhoods change. People who move into National Register districts probably have no clue that they moved into a National Register district. I think the county has got to look at their housing situation and not be so free with giving developers carte blanche personal opinion, for tear downs, because there are situations in which they don't do any good for the neighborhood by what they do.
Yeah, I think our approach,
Removing affordable housing, putting up unaffordable housing.
I think our approach to the county should be less casual and more, now's your opportunity to do something, stop hiding behind Richmond won't do it. It's time to put your lobbyists on this tree issue. And they were willing to do it before, and did do it, but failed because of who was in the governor's chair or which party owned the Senate down there. Now's the time.
Do you have some suggestions on them?
Yes, I think that, again, I agree a lot of things you're saying, Dick. I don't think that we should, this was kind of the theme that we had last meeting. Let's not let perfect be the evil. Is that kind of the phrase?
Enemy of the good.
Because one thing I'm thinking of is considering this step process. I think definitely taking notes of what everybody said. And I think it would be good for us to reach out to each of you that really volunteer to help maybe head some of this. And I think it would be really good for us to start in our own backyard with Maywood. I've already said that I want to go and give a presentation to Maywood to talk about some of the communication issues and, frequently asked questions, that type of thing. And I feel like maybe we should start there and having you all members here to come with during that presentation. And I think that there's something also for us to pull together a summary of what was discussed here next meeting, and kind of highlight some of the goals that everyone's talked about. I think also the idea of figuring out a plan to do outreach for different civic associations. I think some specific neighborhoods we go to. Lion Park, not sure. Is it maybe Green Valley and Paul's Hill? Maybe that's more. And I think that there's also some things to make sure that I learn about past actions that have happened with outreach that didn't work, so that we're not replicating anything. I really like the idea of trying to figure out a way to start small. I think there's going to be a lot of outreach opportunities for us, especially if we're trying to create new tools. We're going to have to go out and do outreach about that all throughout Arlington. So that is an opportunity for us to kind of talk about, hey, preservation isn't just about preserving historic buildings. It's also about infrastructure. It's also about stories. It's also about mid-century architecture. And also kind of show how the HLRB, your views have evolved. You have been more comfortable with trying to find ways to do clean energy with historic homes, as well as being aware of new housing that will, ADUs. I think that there's ways that we can kind of let people know how forward thinking we are, comparison to possibly other historic reports in Virginia. So I think that there's going to be a lot of good opportunities for us to do this outreach. I think we start in our backyard and then we branch out strategically.
All right. I'm going to close that out so we don't take too much time on a short night, but thank you all for having the conversation and participating. Lots of great ideas. And I think we do have a say. Yep, nothing else.
Sure. So, real quick, I wanted to provide an update on the Farcroft Apartments project, specifically going forward to the for its NRHP nomination. So great news. It was listed and approved by the Virginia State Review Board and their Virginia Historic Research Board. So it's officially been listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register, which is the first step. And it has been, I believe, sent to the National Park Service, and they have about 45 days to review the nomination. So hopefully we'll hear soon whether it's going to get listed on the NRHP, but it hit that first step and it was received with applause by those reviewers. So yeah.
That's great.
That is, yeah, thank you for that.
Sure. So also an update for outreach and programming. First off, you may have seen that the first newsletter of the new year just went out earlier today. I believe everyone here is included on the newsletter mailing list, so check that one out if you see it. A lot of very interesting programs are coming up this year in county and with some of our county partners. I won't highlight everything, but I will emphasize that this year Long Branch Nature Center is bringing back its very popular Robert Hansen Spy Talk. They don't do this program every year. Highlights a very interesting part of Glen Carlin history and specifically Long Branch Nature Center history. So do not sleep on that one if you want to register because it does fill up quickly. And again, they don't offer it that often.
Is he going to be there?
He will not. The program was designed by the last tenured Arlington Parks employee who worked at the Nature Center when it was doubling as a. So you get kind of an overview of the spy history, but you also get a little bit of the behind the scenes Nature Center history and what it was like to run nature programs while all of that was going on. So it's a lot of fun.
John, could you just clarify who sent out the newsletter?
This newsletter should be coming out from HPP, I believe.
Arlington.
Oh, is it Arlington County Government? Okay.
Yeah.
That delivery, yeah. If anyone is not getting it, first I can check to make sure that your email addresses are all valid and in there. But in the short term, I can also forward the newsletter to anyone. It's just flag me down.
I don't recall getting it.
Okay, not a problem.
I don't think I got it either. It's possible it went to my junk. Yeah.
That happens.
I could look
That
at
does
that.
happen.
I didn't either, although I've gotten it before, so maybe it's.
It was like kind of later afternoon.
Yes, exactly.
So I got it right.
Fish.
Not my junk either.
Well, and I guess that's another good chance. If you have updated your emails over the last couple of years, we can always plug a new one in as well. For HPP outreach, I think the last program we mentioned we were doing was we had a talk coming up this month at the Arlington Mills Community Center about the skirmish at Arlington Mills that we were performing for Arlington County 55 plus. I did that lecture last week. It was very well attended and very well received and continues our ongoing educational partnership with 55 plus. It was also a very fun program where we got to talk about and not just a moment of neighborhood history, but where we also got to highlight the historic marker process, how markers become a part of the historic landscape interpreting, the importance of researching these markers, and maybe doubly so, the importance of reevaluating these markers and using them as focal points for future research. And so it was a great conversation all around, and we're already looking to do 5+ moving forward. Our next program coming up is we will have a table at Feel the Heritage Festival. That'll be held this year at the Charles Drew Community Center. That's going to be on Saturday, February 21st, from about 12 noon to 5 o'clock p.m. That's a Saturday. So you will be able to find historic preservation in the History Hall, which will be inside the. If you've never been, check it out. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of tables. There's a lot of good community outreach events. A lot of people show up. There are performances and definitely something. This is the Feel the Heritage Festival, which is at the Charles Drew Community Center.
Sponsored by the Green Valley Community Association. So
yes.
They did this last year, but it had a different name. I think it had a different name last year.
Oh, done this for
Has it?
years.
Okay.
When is it, John?
Feel the Heritage?
When?
Oh, when, sorry. February 21st, which is a Saturday from 12 to 5.
I think the title sort of came from the Arlington Black Heritage Museum. I mean, I think that was an association. When they first started it, that's where they got the Feel the Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
Oh, yes.
I'll put in a plug.
And then last thing to mention, of course, Arlington VA 250th. I was not able to attend the last committee meeting, so I don't have anything specifically to report out there. I will say that the larger committee meetings that we've been having once or twice a month are going to start paring back moving forward, since now the committee is focused more on direct event planning for the upcoming History Fest event that we keep plugging. And again, if you get the newsletter, you'll see the full press release, which we printed in full, as well as how to follow up with Arlington Historical Society if you want Nan, did you have anything you wanted to add for 250th?
Just that if, it would be great if you want to go to the History Fest. Also, they are looking for volunteers in many different areas, and I think the press release will have information on how you can sign up. They're looking for people to come up with activities, run activities, do various other sorts of things.
All right, and that was that. You are.